Welcome to the Digible Dudes podcast. I'm here with,
Reid.
and also,
Nicole.
all right, three of us. Look at that. Well, Reid, you were saying if we had a marketing manager that they probably would have had us do a podcast on the upcoming summit to get some sort of promotion. So, you being that you're going to play marketing manager for a minute, I'll let you kick this off. So, what are we talking about?
Yeah, that's probably not all they would be saying to us, but certainly would be one of the things they'd be mentioning is, hey, you might want to promote some of your own stuff. So yeah, I just I just finished a recap of NAA, and we do that a lot with different events and talking about what's out there. And then it culminates, or usually does, in the summit, like as far as the sessions or the kind of content we think is appropriate. And we are here about 2 weeks, I think, in front of our summit, and we have landed on our sessions, and thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk about how we arrived there, what we're excited about, and maybe even get a little bit into, I don't want to say roadmap, but that's going to be a part of it, maybe more than it has in the past. And I think that that's very deliberate on our part, as far as how things are kind of changing a little bit at Digible, which obviously I know we're all really excited about, just kind of how we're evolving. So maybe we can start with what I believe is going to be our first session around the fair housing. And David, obviously, you've hit this super hard, most recently with the AIM reInvent. It's garnered a lot of, I think, interest, and rightfully so, considering where things stand right now, like in the industry and with the new administration and all the concerns around data privacy. That spills over, I feel like, into the whole fair housing conversation. And so, yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about this session, why you're excited about it, who's going to be joining you, all that jazz.
Yeah, so it's funny. I would like for us to talk next about how we decided to pick which sessions we picked, because it's like I feel like we have like 100 topics and we're trying to always figure out like which ones are going to resonate or that we want to at least like push forward right now. But fair housing is one thing that we put is one of the flagship, I guess, topics for our year 2021. So each of the virtual AIM events that we've done this year have been covering fair housing, and then at our summit we wanted to just continue that. This will be different though if you've seen us at AIM. So what we're going to do is dive into some of the audit data that we've done. So far we've audited, I don't know, I think it's like 2,300 properties around the U.S. For their just public presence to see how many of them have issues and what kind of issues those are, and where they're located. I think we may actually extend that audit beyond the couple thousand that we've already done and do a much higher number for the summit. But when we first looked at the audit data, I was personally blown away by how much of an issue it was. Like I knew that the blind spot of fair housing when it came to digital marketing was a concern, but I didn't realize how big, just setting context it was. So what we're going to do for this session is start out with some data from an audit of at least several thousand properties. Then after going through that audit, we'll then move into a panel discussion, and we'll have Doug, that fair housing guy, on. We'll also have Scott from Temple University and Law Atlas, who's got amazing credentials. Like Reid, you were just hammering me the other day on like, have you read Scott's credentials? Like this guy's pretty impressive. And guess it's a good thing we haven't speaking.
Yeah, reading his profile made me almost go into my own midlife crisis, where I was just like, holy cow, I need to get with it. But yeah, he's great. Doug's obviously fantastic, and you've become such an expert yourself, especially on the marketing front. So I think it's great. And you're right, we have a ton of different topics. We always do. But I think what we also have come to appreciate is the importance of consistency. And sometimes, we feel like we're just hearing ourselves say the same thing all over again. And but that's okay, because not everybody catches this podcast, not everybody catches that blog, and everybody was at AIM. And so I think it's healthy, especially for things that are this big and this important, which I completely believe, fair housing falls in that category, that we just need to keep the conversation going. Don't miss opportunities like this. To communicate kind of our feelings on things, and then also, of course, bring in thought leadership. So I think it's going to be a great session. Nicole, I don't know if you have anything to add. Obviously, you're closest to the clients. Whether this has become more of a conversation, more actively brought into your day to day, or if it still seems like we're in the education phase of what's going on with fair housing and digital advertising.
I think it's still the education phase, but we are also that this session is going to go a little bit wider than just fair housing, and it will talk about just corporate compliance. So a lot of what we found with customers that are on the pilot of our tool is that they've wanted to do other compliance things around like certain kind of targeting parameters that they require at the corporate level, or keywords that they don't want to use that may not be a direct fair housing violation, but they want to stay, you know, well, they just want to be consistent on across the board. So this discussion will certainly focus more on fair housing, but then we'll talk with Doug and with Scott in particular about just digital compliance and how what the future is going to look like for corporate America. So I don't know. I'm excited for that topic, and I think you're right, Reed. It's just going to take a lot of education for folks, and so that'll probably continue another year.
Nicole, your voice changed a little there.
I was like, I
Did
think
he
that
say
was
Nicole?
directed to me, but it did cut out. Um, but yeah, I think it's a great topic. I think we're starting to see that movement. Like a lot of our marketers that we're having these monthly conversations with, they are really focused on like ADA is a great example. How can my website be ADA compliant? How can anything that I'm pushing out digitally make sure to fall within ADA parameters so that anyone visiting my website is able to attain information easily, no matter what maybe resolution that they have their screen zoomed in on. And so I think we're going to see that transfer into more of the fair housing space. I think what we're noticing is that fair housing, it obviously hits everyone. It's the operators, it's the marketers. And so it's a great way to kind of, for us at the summit, promote this tool and how we're thinking about fair housing to the industry as a whole, and then kind of see where it fits internally for their structure on how they're dealing with it from a compliance standpoint.
Yeah, totally. Well, what I believe will be sandwiched in the middle for the summit is going to be more directed towards, I don't want to say websites generally in general, but um, it's the maybe the biggest battleground out there, right? Hardly anybody's going to rent an apartment if they haven't spent time on the website. And so there's some new players. There's the ones that everybody's familiar with that are I guess leading the charge. And so much of our conversations around it feel like more like the missed opportunities. But it's gotten better. This is definitely teeing up David and Nicole as far as both the experience, but then more so the performance of these websites. And I don't know how much you're going to spend, David, leading this session focused there versus some of the other, I guess, new technology integrations, whatnot, that are changing that whole landscape. But yeah, what are your thoughts on websites, CRO, AI leasing agents? There's just so much now that's hitting these websites, and then the resident experience obviously should always be at the forefront.
Yeah, well, I think the way this session is going to go is we're going to do a little bit of a past, present, and then gaps when it comes to websites. So you well, I don't want to give too much of the session away, but basically, like websites have not been a terrific experience. Therefore, folks have all these widgets have popped up to help websites, better serve the consumer. And now I still love how Robert from BetterBot constantly says like some websites look like Las Vegas because they have so much popping up, and it's like, well, is that going to remain, or are things going to change a little bit? So the way that I plan to approach this session is do like a little bit of like how we got here and what does today look like, and then what are the gaps that we've uncovered through the different vendor partnerships that we've looked at, and as we've studied more websites, and as we've looked at like optimizing websites to have a better conversion rate. And what I'm hoping people can do is from this session actually have a couple of clear takeaways. So it won't just be like talk about like, well, this would be great if it'll be some of that, but then it'll be like, now what can you do right now to make to help your campaigns perform better, your sites perform better. And then there's going to be a little bit of, as you were saying, Reid, roadmap of like what might the future hold for websites, or how, what do we see as an opportunity for websites in the future, or how you handle websites.
Yeah, Nicole, anything to add there? Again, I'll say more from client perspective, but what you're hearing or your team's hearing day to day about the website Galaxy.
I think it's one of those things that I don't know. I rarely hear like, "Oh, I love the website." I think there's always critique to be had for the website experience. I think we're seeing this shift to like hit on the Las Vegas comment of like, we can't solve for maybe this current problem within the template that we're restricted to within this website, and so let's add a bunch of pop-ups to the bottom, and then that will get us the lead faster. But then maybe we're not taking into account the user experience. So it's kind of like anything. I think there's a ton of players in the space, but then I think it's going to be consolidated. And so I think there is this shift back to, okay, well, how is this affecting the actual consumer and what does that experience look like? So I think we're going to hear more of that over the next year as we start to maybe consolidate some of these providers.
Yeah, totally. Well, and if they you think it looks like Las Vegas, like on the website, wait until you get in the casino. Like meaning all the uh, all the tracking, all the
Right.
code that's dropped on these things. It is a hot mess when you get inside, and that's also a problem. Which I know both of you have plenty of thoughts there. So we won't provide the summit here on this podcast. This is just to promote our shiz, as well as I'll say. But I can't wait to hear more about that. Definitely from both of you guys. So then the last session I'll be moderating, and it's going to be about the impact of consumerization on multifamily, and not just the marketing side of it, but certainly we'll spend some time there, and have to give credit. And I think we've already offered a few shout outs to Real Foundations and David Stanford, but he really brought this to us and asked that David and I present to his firm, and how we felt it was really impacting the marketing side of things. And as we were just saying on the prior podcast, on the NAA recap, it's becoming more and more evident that a lot of the new technology and new companies that are coming into this arena are focused more on the resident. It's not to say that there isn't development and new players and some of the other segments of the industry, but this is definitely becoming a dominant component. And for this session, we thought it would be interesting to have three perspectives, pretty distinct perspectives, and one would be from one of the disruptors. And so we're thrilled to have Everett Lynn from Amenify, who we've had on the podcast before. But as you think about luxury apartment services, I think when I went to their website, that's how they're classifying themselves. But they're really bringing a whole nother level of service to these properties, and they're able to do it at scale, and they're able to also do it through technology, through a platform that allows it, makes it very easy for people to book, whether it's dog walking or whether it's just scheduling some of the fitness stuff, et cetera. And let him definitely talk through that with us. And then we have David Stanford from Real Foundations, and they're an international real estate firm. They also get into single family, but he's got a super rich background in multifamily, and him and his team help bring revenue management into the industry. And so he's just got a great perspective, more so I think on what the table stakes look like, the what people need to invest, how they need to invest, how they should be thinking about running and operating things to meet all this consumerization or the demand that's now hit the industry. And then finally, we're going to have Darlene Egan from Marquette, which has just been a great client of ours, great partner, and I'll Nicole let you add on here, but definitely are in that luxury class of apartments, and so nobody knows how competitive it is, or more competitive than Darlene. And she's already shared, I think, some insights with you, Nicole, if you want to add on to that, just about how she's been experiencing it and what they're trying to do to capitalize, as you just mentioned, like with Latch from NAA. Like, how do we better market this type of stuff? And they seem like a great use case for that.
They really are. So Darlene is great. She's, senior vice president at Marquette. She has over 30 years experience in the industry, and she's really coming at it from a resident experience standpoint. And they also do a lot of development. And so they're thinking about, how are we developing the building from the start to be able to hold it for longer than we typically see with some of our third party property management companies, to really provide that resident experience and retain residents throughout the year. So they're super nimble when it comes to new property technology, and they really care about, how the consumer is experiencing that product. So I think she's going to be a great addition and be able to provide some like real world examples of what they're doing for their properties.
Reed, I wonder if one of the top, if you could get at this, and if not, I'm curious to hear your first thoughts. But I was talking with an ownership group when we were at NAA, and they were like, "Oh, I'm so excited because I just toured this one property that has zero amenities. It's a brand new build, but they've decided to go amenity like less, and basically, just attack it from that angle." And he was saying the reason is because like amenities are expensive and a lot of people don't end up utilizing the amenities. It's kind of his it started to remind me of Uber, how Uber was like you only use the car 4% of the time, so 96% of the time you don't use it. So he had one community that where they share amenities, and like where like if you work with this management company, you can go to any of their properties and you leverage their pool or whatever. And then he had another property that he toured that had zero amenities on purpose. And yet we keep hearing about the housing crisis in America, where there's not enough housing to go around. So a lot of folks don't have to try very hard to lease up their properties. So it feels like there's almost two sides of this, where one side is like, let's make amenities that people are going to love and that they're going to want to leverage and utilize all the time. And then you have this other side where it's like nobody, like there's a housing shortage, so people just need to find a place to put their butt, right? And right now, it almost feels like you could get away with no amenities. But let's say 10 years from now, if we start to produce more housing and it's not as much of a crisis, then those properties that had been built without amenities, it seems like could suffer quite a bit. So maybe they had a higher ROI in the beginning because they didn't do amenities, but later on, they basically now have to start giving stuff away, like free memberships to things, or bring in an amenify, because now there's enough housing to go around and they have to really compete. So I don't know, Reed, if you have any early thoughts on that, but that's something that strikes me like at this moment in time, maybe you don't need the amenities, but a decade from now, you probably would.
Well, I think that's super interesting thread. So I love the stark, I guess, difference there. Like, it's hard to test that idea if you don't go all the way with it. And so it's like we're not going to have any amenities versus this luxury apartment. And even more important, or would be better, is if they were in the same general area, right? There's so many variables there, so you wouldn't want to make a decision on something like that unless you felt like you really were, uh, comparing kind of apples to apples. And I don't know if that would be the intent, because for me, like, to go without amenities, I would need to feel a lot of confidence about my location. Like, I think it would be a disaster. Maybe I'm wrong, but if you were like, we're not going to have a gym, and there's not a gym within 10 miles of this property, then I think you'd have a real uphill battle. It also made me, as you were talking through that, think about affordable housing and what that amenity set, I'll say, looks like. Because for a second there, it's like, well, they're not going to get the same kind of investment, right? That you're going to see with luxury apartments. And so, on some level, is that I don't know, option already exists, but it's not what you're talking about. You're talking about the day-to-day renter. And I was wondering if you were going to mention that he's now passing through on that property, like the cost savings. And so that would be fascinating, right? Where it's like, we're not going to have amenities. And that means that I didn't have to pour an extra million in, or 10 million or 20 million into this asset. And so I can not just bring the rents down by a few percentages, but I can actually bring them down by 50%. And now you've provided affordable housing without it actually being, quote unquote, the traditional affordable housing. And then, how does that work for NOI? I don't know, but I mean, because think about all the additional cost that comes with amenities. It's the servicing and the maintenance. It's not just the upfront investment. And so the amount of savings that you would have as an owner if you were able to get away with not doing that. But then I would feel like tons of pressure on my location where it's like I better be in a spot that has all this stuff or partner with an amenify so that I can convince anybody that walks in that door for a tour. It's like, yeah, you're still going to have all these things, right at your fingertips. They're just not going to be on site.
Yeah, I didn't take it that they were passing the savings along. I took it as in like they're making bigger gains because of it. But then in the other property, where there was an example of like, well, if you're part of this management company, you can go to any of these 10 properties and use their amenities. He was also complaining that they only own one property in that set of like 10 or whatever. And then that one property has better amenities than the other nine. And so everybody from those other properties saw it as a huge benefit to come to the nice new property and go use the pool. And he's like, but they make nothing more on like all of these other people walking into their pool and, making like leaving their cups and trash around and whatever. It's costing them more for maintenance at that point than the other properties. And then I was trying to say like, well, I wonder then if you do that, do you start having like an allocation? Like I don't know that this is how WeWork did it, but if you have WeWork and you can go to any WeWork, there must have been some sort of like allocation where it's like, oh, they traveled to another WeWork and they drank the draft beer or whatever. Therefore, we're gonna cut that WeWork a little bit of extra check or something because of the what they were using. So didn't sound like that existed yet, but yeah, it just sounds like there's a lot of the business model to work out.
Well, I love that. If you're an ownership group, and it happens this way a lot with our clients' portfolios, is there are some pretty nearby, sister properties, so clusters, and then it's almost like the epic ski pass here in Colorado, right? The way Vail thinks about it, but it's like, hey, we offer, for an extra $100 a month, access to our sister properties amenities, and you're getting the benefit because I would think, that even gaining the extra NOI or whatever from not having amenities that you would still, yeah, want to provide some savings back to those tenants. But um, yeah, back to the Epic Pass, I think that could be super cool. But again, if you're having to travel 6-7 miles to get to that sister property, it's not going to be a huge benefit. So you need to be in those tight clusters.
I see it kind of like Frontier Airlines or Spirit or something. Like if I had a property that had no amenities, I'd want to make that, Nicole, back to your marketing message. I'd want to have that front and center of my marketing message that was like, hey, this is no frills. You're not going to get a gym, you're not going to get whatever, but you're going to be getting you're going to get the savings of X, right? And maybe they're still like they split the difference in the savings, like what I imagine like a Frontier or a Spirit do, versus like if you want to get like first class pass, then you got to go somewhere else because Nicole, I think it was in our prior episode, you were talking about the Aura score and how reputation matters. And I could see someone like years from now starting to have like leaving bad reviews because they're like, I don't get anything good. There's no good amenities at this property, so I need to, whatever. I give it a bad score. But if you're front and center with your messaging there and you don't try to hide it, then I feel like people aren't as likely to bash on it.
They actually did also talk about that in the Future of AI session at NAA about it was almost like what you're saying, amenity optimization, kind of tying it back to like revenue management essentially. Like what they found was that, they're renting units with a balcony for a higher rate, but people don't really care about the balcony. And so they're sitting vacant longer because they're renting the lower cost units without the balcony. And so, what is that sweet spot of like pulling that unit down a little bit so that it doesn't sit vacant as longer, so that overall you're optimizing your revenue? So, there was a lot of discussion around like looking at amenities, how much value they're delivering, and making sure that you're pricing it according to what the market will support in terms of value.
Well, this is a really interesting topic, Reed. I don't know how much you'll be able to get at in an hour with with your panel, but now I feel like you've got too much to cover.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like we could talk for a half day on this subject, especially with the three guests that we have. So it's going to be fun, and I'll do my best. I'm going to have a little run through with them and see where they want to spend time before the summit. So hopefully we can figure out a couple of those spots to pick and really get deeper on it. It's going to be fun.
Well, we do
Cool.
have to
But
plug. I was gonna say we have to plug, obviously the date, so it's September 22nd from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Mountain, but stay tuned because that is also Colorado's Bike to Work Day, and so we should have some fun promotional videos coming out about the summit, about how we're kind of incorporating Bike to Work Day. I'll leave it there.
Great job, Nicole. Yeah, if we had a marketing manager, she'd be handing a sticker to you and scowling at me and David for. So yeah, great call out. Yeah, pay attention to our LinkedIn page, social media channels. There's going to be some pretty funny stuff coming out to help promote the event. So looking forward to it as always, and fingers crossed next year we'll be seeing people in person on the next summit. But we got one more virtual one for you.
Well, thanks all.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.